Your value has been reassessed to zero. That's what the CEO's daughter said as she dropped my ID badge into a plastic trash bin like it was a used tissue. Her new assistant, a 22-year-old finance bro named Tucker with a pompadour and no soul, snorted like she'd just delivered a killer punchline on late-night TV. Behind him, two more interns in matching blazers clutched iced lattes and tried not to look horrified, or amused, or human. Ivy reclined in the leather chair that used to belong to her father, CEO emeritus now, off playing retirement golf in Tuscany or some equally overpriced hallucination, and twirled a Montblanc pen like she was auditioning for an evil sorority remake of Succession. You've been with the company since? What, the faxes and floppy disks era? She said, scrolling her phone with one hand, like firing me was just an item on her digital to-do list between manipulate stock price and order oat milk. I didn't answer. I just stood there, holding my hands calmly behind my back, the way I used to when leading investor briefings. The way I did when the servers caught fire that one winter and we had to route 6 million in contracts overnight. The way you do when you know something they don't. Look, Ivy continued, clearly irritated by my silence. Streamlining, shedding legacy bloat, you're smart. I'm sure you'll land somewhere. She tossed a manila envelope across the desk like a frisbee. It skidded to a stop next to a half-eaten acai bowl. HR's prepared a generous exit package, she added, already opening a new Slack window. Security will walk you out in 10. I bent to pick up the envelope. Not because I cared about the contents, I didn't. I just wanted to see if she'd flinch when I stood back up. She didn't. That's when I saw it, framed behind her, slightly crooked like a punchline from the universe. The original investor covenant. The one I helped draft 12 years ago in a conference room with bad coffee and 3 lawyers who all secretly hated each other. My name was still on it, bottom right. Key operational stakeholder, Marissa Klein. I let myself smirk just for a second, by the way. If you've made it this far and you haven't hit that follow button or tapped the like, come on now. 90% of y'all are lurking like Tucker in the break room pretending to know Excel. Show the team some love. It keeps us caffeinated and vengefully creative. Back to the train wreck. Ivy didn't notice my smirk. She was too busy fumbling with her dad's executive signature stamp. It wobbled in her hand, clunky and unfamiliar, like the truth. She pressed it down on a form without aligning it, leaving his name smeared and crooked across a line marked authorized termination. Then she stood up, clearly signaling I should leave. Tucker tried to open the door for me, but the handle stuck. I opened it myself, just like I had opened the last 5 compliance renewals, the last 4 strategic partnerships, and the back door to our biggest investor when our CFO botched a Q4 forecast. I walked out without turning back, didn't say a word, didn't grab the gratitude basket HR had perched like a landmine by the elevator. Just kept walking out of the building into the sun. Home, where my encrypted archive sat waiting, purring like a cat full of claws. I kicked off my shoes, poured a glass of wine, and logged into the vault. Version 3.7. Covenant, fully redlined, my name, my clause, my hammer. I picked up my phone, scrolled to Anderson Counsel, and hit call. Activate the file, I said. Version 3.7. There was a pause on the other end. Then Anderson just said, understood. Because unlike Ivy, he did read the footnotes. HR waited for me by the elevator with all the fake warmth of a hotel concierge who knows you tipped $2 on a 5-night stay. Miss Klein, we just want to say thank you for your many years of service, chirped the woman, Rita, maybe. Rachel, she'd only been there 6 months and still pronounced Klein like clean. In her hands, she held the infamous gratitude basket, an overpriced wicker coffin stuffed with caramel popcorn, stale biscotti, and a coupon for a massage I would never use. I gave her a nod. No smile, no scene, just a nod that said, I built this place while you were still learning how to schedule Outlook meetings, sweetheart. I didn't touch the basket. As the elevator doors slid shut, I caught a final glimpse of Ivy behind the glass wall of her father's old office, legs crossed, headset on, probably narrating some airheaded reorg vision to our clueless junior team. She didn't glance up. Of course she didn't. People like Ivy don't look at you after they think they've erased you. Let her enjoy it. The ride down to the lobby felt like descending through layers of noise-canceled bullshit, buzzwords, branded values, Slack emojis. By the time I hit the revolving doors, it was all silent, crisp, final. I went home, kicked off my shoes, opened a bottle of that dusty Cabernet I'd been saving for the day I either retired or snapped. I figured this counted as both. Then I powered up my personal workstation. Not the work laptop, I left that on the desk untouched. This was the real gear, my vault, my archive. The encrypted server that had lived quietly beneath my kitchen sink since the first time a board member tried to override compliance in 2014. I'd built it out of habit, out of caution, out of the gut instinct that the real danger wasn't a hostile takeover, it was Ivy with a printer and a blank agenda. Password accepted. Biometric scan confirmed. The interface flickered on, clean as ever. I navigated to my legal folder and opened the most recent copy of the funding covenant. There it was. Same clause, same font, same signature from the managing partner of our lead investor, Marissa Klein designated material personnel, clause 14C. I scrolled to the margin notes. The last red line comment from Anderson, my attorney, still sat there. Any involuntary termination triggers breach remedy. Mandatory investor notification required within 72 hours. I leaned back, remembering the exact day we wrote that clause. Flashback to 6 years earlier. Conference room A302. My hair was longer then. The fund's lawyer, Blake, wore mismatched socks and drank espresso like it was holy water. He didn't trust our CFO. I didn't trust our CEO. So we compromised in writing. If they ever try to cut you out, he said, tapping his pen on the draft, this clause guarantees consequences. I'd laugh then. You think they'd be that stupid? He looked at me like I'd just asked if water was wet. They're executives, he said. Eventually, yes. I closed the file, let that memory fade, and picked up my phone. Anderson answered on the second ring. No hello, just silence, the kind that means he's already reading the situation. Activate the red line file, I said. Version 3.7. Pause. Understood, he said. No questions. No small talk, just execution, because that's what the real professionals do. While Ivy and her espresso interns were busy gamifying leadership, I had built an entire career on knowing where the bodies were buried and exactly which footnote would resurrect them. I sipped my wine, pulled a blanket over my legs, and watched the inbox start to ping. 3 unread messages already. One from legal, one from the investor liaison, and one from someone I hadn't heard from in years. The game had started. I hadn't moved a single piece, and already they were scrambling. It took less than 48 hours for Ivy to start tap dancing on my grave. She posted a company-wide Slack announcement titled Phase 1, Operational Evolution, complete with a fire emoji, a lightning bolt, and a headshot of herself holding a mug that said Boss Babe. I nearly choked on my cereal when a former colleague forwarded it to me. This week, we begin streamlining legacy bloat and energizing our workflows, she wrote, as if she hadn't just booted the woman who was the workflow. Please welcome Leela Montclair as our new head of operations. Leela brings a fresh vision, an elite MBA, and an exciting lens on modern productivity. Leela, Jesus Christ. Leela was her bestie from grad school, a woman who once brought margaritas to a strategy offsite and referred to due diligence as Debbie Downer energy. Her previous experience? A 2-year stint at a lifestyle brand that sold Bluetooth-enhanced yoga mats. She listed vibes as a leadership value on LinkedIn. By noon that day, the junior managers were in open panic mode. I got the text almost instantly. Hey, do you know where the supplier compliance tracker lives? Can't find anything post Q2. Did you submit the EU cross-border forms? Legal's asking. Wait, who handles the funding traceability log now? I didn't respond. Let them sit with it. By Friday, someone had tried to duplicate my access templates and locked the internal server. The audit portal kicked back 4 incomplete filings. A Slack thread labeled Urgent Ops Escalation Fire exploded with questions, none of which had answers. Leela's response, a 3-sentence update that ended with "We got this flexed biceps." Spoiler, they did not got this. The quarterly audit deadline for the Everlock Capital Fund, our primary investor, came and went with no submission. Ivy either didn't know or didn't care, too busy scheduling inspirational fireside chats about culture resets and posting filtered selfies from her executive wellness corner, which appeared to be an ergonomic chair with a succulent. But the fund noticed. Always notice. At precisely 9:02 a.m. on Monday, every member of the C-suite received an email from Everlock's oversight team. The subject line was sterile, urgent, compliance review requested personnel change notification received no emojis, no pleasantries, just one line in the body. Per Clause 14C, please prepare supporting documentation for immediate audit. Clause 14C, the one with my name on it. Pictured Ivy reading that email, blinking slowly like a raccoon caught with a vape pen. The silence across company channels that morning was palpable. Leela's Monday momentum update never arrived. Ivy didn't post her usual Power Hour Spotify playlist. HR sent a sudden calendar blocker for all department heads with the mysterious title, Investor Readiness Discussion. Meanwhile, I was at a diner on the edge of Lake Tahoe eating pancakes the size of steering wheels, sipping black coffee and watching it all unfold on my burner Slack account, an old admin backdoor nobody had revoked. The best part? They didn't even realize the audit wasn't optional. The moment my name was removed without notice, that clause snapped into effect like a bear trap. They triggered it themselves. All it took was a little hubris and a stamp from Daddy's desk. A former finance analyst messaged me that afternoon. Are you seeing this? Everlock just sent 3 reps to HQ. Ivy looks like she's about to puke. I let the message sit unread. There's something deeply satisfying about watching a dollhouse fall apart. All those plastic smiles, all that curated control. And underneath, toothpicks and glitter and termites. Hungry, litigious termites. Ivy was mid-presentation, something about quarterly visioning and rebranding compliance as a journey, when the boardroom doors flew open like someone had detonated a grenade in the lobby. And in walked the man himself, her father, Mitchell Brandt, the man whose name was still stitched into the company's mission statement, whose scowl once made 3 vendors cry during a single lunch, and whose absence over the past year had made Ivy feel emboldened enough to cosplay as a real executive. No flight announcement, no warning, no smile, just a trench coat over a charcoal suit and a look that said something had gone very wrong in paradise. Every senior exec stood up so fast they nearly headbutted the ceiling. Leela tried to introduce herself. "Hi, I'm leading operations now, it's such an honor," but he walked right past her like she was a dying houseplant. "Everyone out," Mitchell said flatly. Ivy stayed seated. That was her first mistake. Within seconds, the room cleared. Just her father, and the CFO, Gregory, a thin man with permanent flop sweat and a nervous laugh that sounded like a car failing to start. Mitchell didn't sit. He just stood at the head of the table, knuckles on the wood like he was bracing to flip it. "What the hell is going on?" he asked. Gregory swallowed so hard it was audible through the door. "There's been a triggering event," he said, voice shaking. "The Covenant. Clause 14C. Mitchell's eyes narrowed. "What the hell is Clause 14C? Ivy shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her lips twitching like she wanted to interrupt but hadn't figured out how to sound confident while doing it. Gregory looked like he was about to cry. She fired Marissa." The words hit the air like a gunshot. Mitchell didn't blink, didn't even breathe, just stared. "Then you fired who?" His voice ricocheted off the glass walls, down the hallway, and probably into the parking garage. People flinched outside. Someone in HR dropped a coffee mug. Ivy opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She was slowing things down, legacy mindset. "We're pivoting," and Mitchell slammed both palms on the table. "Did you read the funding agreement before you gutted your backbone?" "I'm the CEO now," Ivy snapped, defensive. "It's my call." "No, you're the interim CEO. And this company is still bound to Everlock's investor controls, which you clearly didn't bother to learn before playing corporate Hunger Games." He turned to Gregory. "Pull the original covenant," he barked. "Now, full version, not the summary Ivy had her intern paraphrase into bullet points." Gregory scrambled like his chair was on fire. Within seconds he was back with a thick red folder, trembling slightly as he placed it on the table. Mitchell opened it. His eyes scanned the pages with surgical precision, flipping through clauses until he landed on the one that mattered. Clause 14C, he read aloud. "Designated material personnel, Marissa Klein. Termination without investor consultation constitutes breach of agreement, enforceable by asset forfeiture or immediate control assumption." He looked up slowly. "Do you know what that means, Ivy?" She crossed her arms. "It means they'll bluff. They always do. They're already here. 3 Everlock auditors in the damn lobby, and a formal notice of compliance breach on my phone." Mitchell picked up the folder, waved it like a warrant, and hissed, "Do you have any idea what you've just cost us?" Ivy's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Outside the room, employees stood frozen, pretending not to listen but hanging on every syllable. The kind of silence that only comes right before a company changes hands or burns down. Mitchell turned to Gregory again. "Get legal. The real team, not whatever startup clowns she's been hiring. We need to know exactly how screwed we are." He looked once more at his daughter. This time, no rage, just disbelief. "Jesus, Ivy, you just handed the keys to a nuke and pressed launch because you thought it was a TikTok filter." The boardroom was still smoldering from Mitchell's explosion when the real fire walked in. No knock, no assistant, no announcement, just the dull click of polished shoes on tile, and then the sudden, surgical appearance of a man in a slate-gray suit holding a leather portfolio like it contained a death sentence. Because it did. "Hello, everyone," he said, tone so dry it could sand wood. "Brandon Fields, lead auditor, Everlock Capital." The air went heavy. You could feel it, the oxygen had changed. Mitchell straightened in his seat. Ivy, caught halfway through dabbing her eyes and reapplying lipstick, pasted on a frozen smile like she thought she was hosting a charity brunch. "Oh, Brandon, of course," she said, rising. "We were just reviewing the—" He didn't shake her hand. Didn't even glance at it. Instead, he walked calmly to the head of the table, Mitchell's spot, and placed a thick, dog-eared document squarely in the center. The original funding covenant, marked up in red ink like a teacher grading the world's most expensive group project. He tapped the page. One name underlined, highlighted, bolded. Marissa Klein. "This clause," Brandon said, voice even. "Clause 14C, material personnel designation. Triggered automatically upon involuntary termination without investor advisement." Ivy opened her mouth, but Mitchell raised a hand. Brandon continued. "Per terms of contract, your firm has 72 hours to either reinstate Miss Klein in full capacity or settle the breach penalty." He looked directly at Ivy now, not blinking. "Failure to do either will result in immediate enforcement of seizure protocol. We've already pre-authorized it. Just in case." Silence. Mitchell's jaw flexed once. Gregory, the CFO, looked ready to vomit into his tie. Ivy tried to speak again, but her voice caught somewhere between "we" and "didn't know." Brandon ignored it. "We've also frozen draw access from Everlock managed funds pending resolution," he added. "We've issued a provisional hold on your Series D release. The clause's language is quite clear. Any removal of designated stakeholders nullifies active funding agreements until corrective action is taken or penalties are paid in full." Then he finally looked around the table, gaze slicing through each executive like a scalpel. To be clear, he said, this isn't a negotiation. It's a compliance audit, and the timer has already started. He stepped back, adjusted his cufflinks, and turned toward the door. I'll return at noon on Thursday, with counsel. And then just like that, he was gone. No folders gathered, no smiles exchanged, just the weight of a $45 million penalty hanging in the air like a guillotine. Ivy sank into her chair. No one's going to actually seize anything, she mumbled. Right, this is just pressure. Leverage. Mitchell didn't answer. Gregory looked up from his calculator with eyes full of static. We don't even have half that liquid. And reinstatement? She's not coming back. She has to, Ivy snapped, panic creeping into her voice. No, Mitchell said coldly. She doesn't. He pushed his chair back, stood, and stared out the window like he was watching his company evaporate one share at a time. The sun outside was too bright, too cheerful. Inside the boardroom, the lights felt like interrogation bulbs, and on the table, Marissa's name glared up from the paper, silent, unshakable, and suddenly more powerful than anyone in the room. They hadn't just fired her. They detonated their own foundation. And now they were standing in the rubble, waiting for the roof to fall. By the time legal shuffled in, the boardroom had devolved into the verbal equivalent of a bar fight in a yacht club. Ivy was pacing in heels too high for crisis management, waving her arms like she was trying to swat the blame out of the air. I had the right? She kept insisting, voice cracking with each repetition. I'm the acting CEO. Personnel decisions fall under my jurisdiction. Mitchell sat silent in the corner, arms crossed so tightly it looked like he might implode. He hadn't spoken since Brandon left, just stared at a hairline crack in the marble table like it was a metaphor. Gregory had given up pretending to calculate anything. The CFO just sat there, ghost white, fiddling with his wedding ring and muttering numbers to himself. Enter Rachel Yoon, general counsel. Smart, sharp, always impeccably dressed in a way that screamed I billed 400 hours last month and slept in a Tesla. She walked in clutching a laptop and a binder and a coffee she hadn't touched. We believe, she began, voice steady, there's room for interpretive flexibility in the material personnel clause. The language leaves ambiguity around what constitutes operational necessity versus symbolic designation. If we frame Marissa's role as non-essential, we can, her sentence stopped midair. Because right then, everyone's phones buzzed at once. One email from David Shaw Everlock, counsel subject. Covenant Addendum Compliance, Marissa Klein, attachment. Signed Annex 2021 reaffirmed clauses PDF. The attachment was a time bomb. Mitchell opened it instantly, projected it onto the wall with the subtle fury of a man done playing nice. There it was. Clause 14C remains enforceable and binding through all fiscal periods. Reviewed and reaffirmed in 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. Signatories: Mitchell Brandt, CFO Gregory Lin, Legal Counsel Rachel Yoon, Investor Rep David Shaw. Rachel visibly swallowed. I wasn't aware they'd sent this already. Mitchell didn't even look at her. You signed it. The air thickened. Ivy, Gregory whispered, what the hell were you thinking? They're bluffing, she snapped. They don't want to take control, they just want leverage. We push back. Reframe the narrative. This is optics. Politics? Mitchell turned his full body to face her. This isn't LinkedIn, Ivy. You don't get to pivot your way out of a contractual death spiral. Then another ping. From internal counsel this time. Subject, fire urgent email flagged in litigation hold. Everyone looked at Rachel. She was already opening it. On the screen appeared an email sent 2 weeks ago, subject line, cutting the deadwood before Q4. Sent by Ivy Brandt to Rachel Yoon, Leila Montclair, and 2 other VPs CC, HR Director Body. We need to clean house before Q4 gets here. Starting with Marissa. She's deadwood and we need fresh blood before the investor summit. If anyone raises legal, I'll call it a visioning restructure. We'll bury it in the reorg. Rachel froze. I thought I redacted. You didn't, Mitchell said, voice low and lethal. Now the investor's legal team has a direct written admission of retaliatory termination with foreknowledge of clause violation. Ivy's face drained to the color of printer paper. Delete it, she said. Rachel didn't move. I said delete IT. It's already on their servers, Rachel said quietly. Metadata timestamped. There's no deletion now. That's when the shouting started. One board member threatened to call his own legal team. Another accused Ivy of corporate sabotage. Leila tried to offer a branding solution and was told to leave the room. Someone knocked over a glass of water. HR walked in and walked right back out. Mitchell stood in the middle of it all like a condemned king watching his court eat itself. Then he said, we need to call Marissa. The room fell silent. You fired the one person who could have prevented this, he said. Now you better pray she'll save you from it. Ivy opened her mouth to protest, but no sound came, because there were no buzzwords left. No reorgs, no hashtags, just consequences and clocks ticking, and a door that was no longer locked because the person who held the keys was already walking away from the building. At precisely 8:03 a.m. on Thursday, the breach notice arrived. No preamble, no phone call, just an envelope hand-delivered by a courier in a dark suit who didn't bother to make eye contact. Inside, 3 crisp pages on Everlock capital letterhead and a single cover note stapled to the front. This letter serves as formal notice of material breach under Clause 14C of the funding covenant. Please prepare for transition procedures effective immediately, pending resolution within the grace period outlined below. Attached was the grace period summary. 72 hours. It expired in 15 minutes. The boardroom sat in eerie silence. Phones flipped over. Coffee cups abandoned. The only sound was the soft hum of the HVAC system and the subtle scratching of the CFO's pen as he tried fruitlessly to make numbers add up that simply wouldn't. Mitchell didn't sit. He stood at the window, arms behind his back like a general watching a city burn. His eyes didn't blink. His jaw didn't move. And when Ivy finally stood to speak, it was the first time anyone had looked directly at her in hours. "Dad," she said, "you have to fix this." No one called him that, not here, not ever. It was a personal plea in a professional graveyard, and it hung in the air like a prayer wrapped in desperation. Mitchell didn't respond, didn't even turn around. "I made a mistake," Ivy said louder now. "Okay, I get it, I overstepped, but you have to talk to them. You have history with Everlock. Pull something, call in a favor, make it right." She was crying now, mascara starting to betray her as much as her judgment had. No one moved to comfort her, because this wasn't a family fight anymore. This was survival. Then Brandon Fields entered, same suit, same face, same dead-eyed calm. He walked to the end of the boardroom table and placed a black binder on the surface. Opened it with surgical precision. Inside, a formal transition packet, fully tabbed with signatures already filled on their side. "I'll be brief," Brandon said. "We are at the end of your remediation window. Per the breach protocol, Everlock requires one of 2 actions to occur now." Everyone leaned forward instinctively. "Option 1," he said, "wire $45 million to the attached routing information to satisfy the covenant breach penalty in full." He paused. "Option 2, surrender operational control per the forfeiture clause. Immediate effect. Everlock assumes direct oversight until further notice." Ivy's mouth opened, but Mitchell's voice cut through first, quiet, gravelly, final. "How long do we have to make the transfer?" Brandon glanced at his watch. 7 minutes, the room went still. Not tense, paralyzed, like a deer not even trying to outrun the headlights anymore. All eyes turned to Gregory. The CFO looked like he'd aged a decade in 3 days. His fingers twitched as he fumbled for his tablet. After a long moment, he looked up and said, barely audible, "We can't cover it, not even close." "How close?" someone asked. Gregory laughed. "Strange, broken sound. Try 27 million short. And that's if we gut R&D and default on payroll." Silence again. Brandon nodded once. He didn't look satisfied, just efficient. "Then Everlock will assume control," he said, "as stipulated." He pushed a folder toward Mitchell. "Sign there, acknowledgement of transition." Mitchell didn't move, his face was unreadable. But his hand eventually reached forward, slow and deliberate. Ivy lunged across the table. "No, we can still fix this. I'll call Marissa. I'll double her offer, triple it, she's not vindictive." "She won't, she already declined," Mitchell said without looking at her. The weight of that sentence broke something in Ivy. She crumpled back into her chair, hands shaking. Brandon gathered the signed page and closed the binder. "Everlock will begin immediate deployment of transitional personnel," he said. "Expect full oversight by noon tomorrow. Our legal team will liaise directly with yours." He paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, "And per clause escalation, your internal systems administrator access will be revoked in 90 seconds. Ivy looked around as if waiting for someone to object. No one did. Gregory closed his laptop. A junior board member pulled out their phone and started Googling executive indemnity clause. The room was collapsing in real time, not with a bang, but with the quiet clicking of dominoes laid years ago by a woman they thought was expendable. And now, she wasn't even in the building. She was the building. I was halfway up a switchback in Tahoe when the call came through. My boots were caked in red dust. The air smelled like pine and old snow. Birds were chirping like they hadn't just watched a Fortune 500 company eat itself from the inside out. I had no service for most of the morning, not that I was checking. And you know the bomb's already detonated, you don't go hunting the ashes. But eventually the phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Mitchell Brandt, of course. I let it ring twice. Just long enough to remind him this was my time now. Then I answered. "Marissa speaking." A pause. "Then, Marissa, it's Mitchell." His voice didn't have the weight it used to. The man who once silenced entire rooms with a throat clear now sounded like someone trying not to choke on his own pride. "I know you're probably busy." "I am," I said, casually adjusting my pack strap. "What's going on?" Another pause, longer this time. "We need you to come back," he said, effective immediately. Full title, operational control, triple what you made before. You'll report directly to the board, no Ivy. I stepped onto a rock ledge and looked out over the lake, calm, ironic. "You should have called before you handed her the keys, Mitch." "I know," he said, softer. "That was my mistake." "No." Corrected, it was hers. "Yours was thinking I'd still be here to clean it up." Silence. Then very quietly, "Will you at least think about it?" I let the wind answer for a moment before I replied. "I've moved on, but I do wish Ivy the best." A long exhale on the other end. Relief, regret, resignation? I didn't care. "She'll need it," I added. Then I ended the call. No goodbye, just peace. By the time I got back down the trail and into range, my inbox was on fire. One message caught my eye, flagged high priority. Subject: transfer of control pending final investor sign-off from Brandon Fields to Legal Mitchell Brandt, Investor Relations CC, Marissa Kleinbody, effective upon final counter-signature. Everlock Capital assumes full operational control of Brandt Systems per Clause 14C. Compliance and strategy oversight will be advised exclusively by MK Advisory Group, as designated by investor preference. I read it twice. Then I smiled. MK Advisory Group. That would be Marissa Klein Advisory Group, my new firm. I'd formed it quietly the day after I walked out, with enough NDAs and soft commitments in my back pocket to make 3 ex-competitors sweat. I hadn't planned to use it this soon, but fate doesn't wait for anyone, especially not fools. I forwarded the email to Anderson, my attorney, with a simple note: confirm boardroom readiness. I want the marble chair this time. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji and a photo of a nameplate already in production. Etched in gold, not plastic. The boardroom was silent, not the tense kind of silence like before a vote or after a bad earnings call. No, this was terminal. The kind of stillness that settles in once everyone in the room realizes they've already lost. There's no fixing, no spinning, just the sound of reputations bleeding out into expensive carpet. Brandon Field stood at the head of the table, same slate gray suit, same expressionless stare. He didn't sit. He didn't blink. He just reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a small, unmarked black box. It looked like something you'd use to launch a missile or unlock a vault. He placed it gently at the center of the table. Contained within, he said calmly, are the master credentials for Brandt Systems' internal admin architecture, investor portals, compliance frameworks, and digital keychains. The transition log has been timestamped. All prior access has been revoked. He let that sink in, then added, your penalties now exceed your available cash reserves. As per Clause 14C, Everlock Capital is assuming operational control, effective immediately. Gregory, the CFO, made a sound, something between a whimper and a sigh, but didn't object. He just pushed his chair back slightly, like he didn't want to be physically close to whatever this moment was. Ivy sat perfectly still. Her hands were folded on the table like a student waiting to be expelled. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. The performance had been wrung out of her days ago. All that was left was the hollow shape of ambition and a very expensive manicure clenching into her palm. Brandon opened his binder one last time. In the back pocket, he pulled a document. Here is the revised operating agreement, he said. Per investor directive, oversight and compliance will now be advised exclusively by MK Advisory Group. There were murmurs, soft, stunned, not angry, just defeated. Marissa Klein has accepted advisory rights. She will not be returning in-house. All communications with Everlock must route through her office moving forward. No one argued. What could they say? Ivy blinked. Finally, as if waking up from a long, entitled dream. Her gaze flicked to Mitchell, hoping maybe for a last-minute reprieve, a shield from the consequences she'd forged herself. But Mitchell never looked at her. He stared straight ahead, jaw locked, face like stone. The man who had once built an empire, now watching it handed off by legal right to the woman he'd let walk out the door. Brandon snapped the binder shut. Any questions? No one spoke. He nodded once. Then we're done here. He left the black box on the table, like a tombstone. As the rest of the room began to disband, quietly, quickly, like people fleeing the scene of a crime, Ivy remained seated for a long moment. Long enough for everyone to see that the crown didn't just fall, it shattered. Eventually she rose, no tantrum, no speech. She gathered her things, her phone, her coffee mug with boss energy printed on the side, framed photo of her and her father from a gala where they both looked so sure of everything. She stepped into the hallway and froze, because there it was, on the wall outside the boardroom. A maintenance tech on a ladder was finishing up the install. A new nameplate, etched into dark marble, backlit. MK Advisory Group Strategic Control HQ underneath, in clean, elegant font. Compliance Oversight. Marissa Klein. Ivy stared at it for a long moment. Long enough that she was still standing there when the elevator doors closed behind her. Marissa never came back through the front door. She didn't need to. She owned the building now. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.